Okay, what I'm going to show you is one of my sanding techniques that I use. This nose cone, I've sanded the join line. There's a couple of scars and stuff where the sprue separation, the sprue gates were, so I've basically, after lightly sanding it, I've given the entire seam line a coat of Mr. Surfacer 500. That's been allowed to dry, and now I'm going to sand that joint. Now, one of the things I prefer to use for most of my sanding jobs, rather than straight wet and dry, is micro mesh. I find with micro mesh, you can use very rough grade micro mesh. This is about 150 grade micro mesh, and it removes a lot of material very quickly, but leaves a surprisingly smooth finish. Certainly much smoother than you'd get using 150 grit wet and dry or similar. So I tend to gravitate towards this for a lot of my sanding jobs now, just because I can remove a lot of material quickly and it leaves a smoother finish than you would otherwise get. You can use it wet or dry. I'm using it dry in this instance. Be careful as you sand. You don't want to create any flat spots, especially at the rear of the radome here, where it's going to join onto the fuselage. You don't want any changes in profile between the radome and the fuselage. That will stand out a lot if you do that. So just take some care. So anyway, that's basically that's it. That's taken me what, 15 or 20 seconds to sand that joint down. Then what I'll tend to do is I'll move to a smoother. This is 1500 grit micro mesh. It's a well worn piece of 1500 grit, I have to say. And I'm just running over that join now, just with that, and essentially using 2 grades of micro mesh. I've now sanded that join. I could use that on the model as it is now. There'd be no scratches or anything like that in it. No sanding marks. Micro mesh is that good. What I like to do is just give it a quick rub over with some fine Scotch-Brite. Just to give it a little bit of a polish. And really that's it done. Like I say, I prefer micro mesh. You can see from the results I've got there with the micro mesh how quick and easy it is to use it. So I'm just going to do the underside of the radome now, where there was another couple of marks. Once again, that's it done. You know, I can't deny that. You know, part of the ease of dealing with this is the fit of the kit in the first place. But I really can't stress enough that if you look on places, eBay, if you put the keyword micro mesh into an eBay search, invariably it'll turn up people selling sheets of micro mesh of various grades for good prices, or you can go to any of the online model shops these days. A lot of them have micro mesh sanding kits. The sanding kits are great for smaller jobs. I like to buy a few sheets of the micro mesh from eBay when I see them. It just gives me plenty, because that piece of micro mesh there I've been using for, well, since January, February this year, and it's still got plenty of abrasive left on it, and it's just getting nicely worn in at this point in actual fact. Now yesterday, you may remember, or the last time as it was, I glued this air brake in place after having a little rant about separate air brakes on the dorsal areas of jet fighters. You may remember it clicking into place and really being a superb fit in spite of my my displeasure with the that arrangement. That's had a day to dry now. It should be a day should be enough. So all I'm doing is again using the fine micro mesh, just giving it a light polish over, just to remove any of the glue marks or anything I left while I was gluing it in place. And really, to be honest, that's it. Barring flood, fire or disaster, that's all I plan to do with that. Now you remember yesterday when I was discussing the interior of this model, I said that I was going to be using the kit decals for the instruments. So I've painted the tub and the instrument panel the correct sort of blue-grey colour. And I'm going to use the kit decals for the instrument and side consoles. They're really very nicely printed. A lot of people complain that Hasegawa and Tamiya decals, basically the Japanese manufacturers' decals, tend to be thick. Now what I've found in my experience is not the decals that are thick, it's the adhesive they use which gives it a thick appearance. And the way I've found to overcome that is to use water as hot as you can stand, and plenty of softeners, and you'll find out that ultimately it's not the decal that's thick, it's just the appearance created by the adhesive. And I've in fact had some decals from Tamiya on a Thunderbolt before now, which I couldn't remove when I changed the colour scheme and had to paint over, and with a very light coat of paint over them, you couldn't even tell that there had been a decal on the model in the first place. It was completely invisible, which kind of proved to me that it's not the decal that's thick, it's it's the adhesive they use on the decals. So here's the instrument panel. It's a Japanese decal, I want it to adhere well, so what I'm going to use is the GSI Mr. Mark Setter and Mr. Mark Softer. I have a large variety of different setting and decal setting solutions. For a Japanese decal I want to go down very well, and to some difficult contours I'm going to stick with the Japanese products. Only seems to make sense to me. So that's had a few seconds to soften. You can see it's coming off just fine. So I'm going to lift the decal off, and having applied some Mr. Mark Setter to the instrument panel, it's very good in that only what I'm liking about this decal is that only the actual instruments themselves have been printed on the decal, the rest of it's clear, so the background colour shows through. So that's my that's that instrument panel decal in place, in the right place. So what I'm going to do now is with the Mr. Mark Softer, I'm going to apply a liberal coat of the Mr. Mark Softer over the decal and wait to see how it snuggles down. And I have to say, within a couple of seconds of applying that that decal, the softener, it's started to pull right into the instrument panel detail already. It's really has softened the decal a great deal. So that needs putting to one side and not touching. Okay, so you may remember that yesterday I I glued the intake halves together. I've had a look at them today, and basically I've made a bit of a mess of both of them without realising it. I should have checked after I'd glued them for alignment. I've looked at them today, and unfortunately, certainly down the seam of the port intake and a little bit on the starboard intake, there are some fairly serious seams which are completely my fault and nothing to do with the fit of the kit. I should have checked that. I didn't. My bad, basically. So what I've done is I've lightly sanded the seams prior to coming on video here with some rough micro mesh just to see how bad I've done. And I've got a step which I could sand away. It would take a couple of minutes to sand it away, but what I don't want to do is distort the shape of the intake by doing that, because I need to maintain that kind of there's a circular a semicircular piece at the rear, and it flattens out into the area of the auxiliary intake. So what I don't want to do is distort that too much. So rather than sand that step away, I'm going to fill the step on the other side. And what I'm going to be using to fill this one this time round is Tamiya's polyester putty, which is much the same as things like plastic padding or Isopon from Halfords. It's just much finer grained and smooths and feathers exceptionally well. Now, for some reason, I appear to have, yeah, that's off now. I'd obviously got some around the cap and was having trouble removing the cap there. So what I'm going to do is just squeeze a little bit of that out onto a piece of tape here, and then use some of the hardener, which comes in a little pot like that. I've used I tend to use a cocktail stick, which I've snipped off and flattened off into a very small flattened area for mixing and spreading this. I don't know if you can see that. There's really a tiny little bit of hardener on there, which generally is plenty. I might add a tiny bit more, but not much. So as you can see, you can hardly see that on the edge of the cocktail stick. So, so the amount of hardener to actual filler is tiny, probably 1–2% maybe. So what I'm going to do is mix that, and you'll see it takes on quite a yellow appearance because of the hardener. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just spread some of this filler along the line where it needs filling. It's very it's quite thin and very easily spreadable. It does key into the plastic a little bit, nothing like one of the solvent-based fillers like I don't know, Tamiya's basic putty or you know, Squadron green stuff. Squadron green stuff being something I haven't really used for many years now. I found it was much too coarse. Tamiya's basic putty is the one that I tend to use. As it sands out beautifully, but for this step's just a little bit too big. I don't want to be using something like a solvent-based putty for it. So that's it. That'll be left to thoroughly dry out. As it's a chemical reaction rather than a solvent evaporating type drying. It will dry. Once it's dry, it is properly dry. There's no skinning effect or anything like that because it's a chemical reaction that sets this. It dries thoroughly. You won't find any soft spots. There'll be no shrinkage or anything like that, which can occur with some of the more with some of the solvent-based putties. So that So that's that for those. Good bit about doing this on the masking tape is that once that's done, look, you can just wrap it up like that and throw it away. It's very quick and clean. So that's the intakes hopefully filled. I'll sand those back when they're thoroughly dry. I'll show you how I go about that, and we can see how they look after I've repaired my cock-up. Okay, well, welcome back. With the with this filling done and dry now, what I need to do is remove the bulk of the filler. So to do that, I'm going to use a fairly coarse grade of sanding stick. Okay, I'll bring you in a little bit closer. So hopefully you can see that okay. And then it's I'm just going to quickly remove the bulk of the filler from this intake part here. I'm using a very, like I say, it is a rough, a very coarse grade of sanding stick, so I have to be very careful that I don't scratch the actual plastic up too much. I don't want to get it down level at this point. All I'm really looking to do is, like I say, remove the bulk of the filler, so that I'm left with a surface I can then finish off and get to a good finish. So I'm switching to a finer grade of sanding stick here, just to remove a bit more of it. As you can see, a lot of the techniques I use are actually fairly quick. I know a lot of people would tend to go with a quite fine grade of wet and dry, certainly nothing more coarse than 400 grit. I always think get rid of the majority of the material as soon as you can, using the coarse grades, and then you can refine the finish after. Okay, so with that I'm switching back to my 150 grit piece of micro mesh here. And just starting to polish that back some. Okay, moving on to my finer grit. As I come to finish off the sanding process, I'm going to use a drop or two of water to wet the surface. This clears the sludge out quicker and essentially makes the abrasive more effective, more efficient. Let me just find a piece of kitchen towel to clean that away. Okay, I hope you can see that. That's more or less done now. I will give it a light polish with the Scotch Brite, but I'll probably do that after I've added it to the model itself. Now, as you can see, the vast majority of the filler is gone, so the initial step that I was left with has largely been sanded away, so it wasn't quite as bad as I'd initially expected it to be. But that just shows how quickly even even a cock-up of my own making can be cured. So that is more or less ready to be added to the model, blended in, and then any panel detail that's been lost will need to obviously be rescribed. So I'm just going to do the same with this air intake. As I say, once again, look, the vast majority of it has been removed in a very few seconds with the coarse grade. Before moving straight onto the finer grade of sanding stick. As we move towards the finishing operations. Okay. One of the things I want to do when I'm building my models is demystify a lot of the techniques that that people talk about, and certainly some of the less experienced or newcomers to the hobby will wonder about. There's very little that's particularly complex about building models. It just takes time, care, and a willingness to experiment, I would say. Okay, so there we go, we're back to there already, so on with the finer grit of micro mesh and sanding to polish. Now hopefully you can see on this one that I've left a fair bit more of the filler in, so you can see that the step on this particular nacelle join was a bit worse than the other one. Like I said before, and I really can't overstress this was my fault. It wasn't the fault of the kit. Okay, so the fact that I've had to do this filling, sanding and levelling of the join is entirely down to me and nothing to do with the kit. The kit in this instance is blameless.